people and we hear more names, it'll become a lot more real to me. But right now, I feel like I'm still in the bubble of the day, and the whole experience is just kind of numbing.
Fairbanks has been a cameraman for 16 years, but today he wasn't operating on experience. It was instinct. And that's what drew him back for one last shot. That's when the tower began to collapse.
I was looking in the viewfinder, and I just saw this reverse mushroom cloud billowing down, and I realized my proximity, and immediately just turned and started running north.
But for Evan Fairbanks, this is the image that will haunt him and us for the rest of our lives.
The image of that plane just coming out of nowhere, coming into the frame, and disappearing into the south side of the tower, as if a floor had been hollowed out and it was a hangar that it was just landing in. We've seen these images in movies, and we know that it's all artificial, and Hollywood makes it. And it's hard to put together that it's real this time.
Well, and as it was real, as everybody now knows. It's interesting, in the Middle East, political leaders have asked people not to celebrate this attack on the United States. It's interesting that, even in nations which have historically had a long friendly association with the United States, including Egypt, there has been a tendency among some people who have been more profoundly politicized in the last several years to acknowledge this attack on the United States with pleasure. In Cairo, it's reported tonight that some students, taxi drivers, and shop owners actually crowded around television sets watching what was happening here and saying in Arabic, Mabruk, Mabruk, which actually means congratulations. But it's fair to say, knowing the region reasonably well, that there are a vast number of people in the Arab world who are deeply attached to the United States, a great number of people who have family living in the United States today. There are some towns on the West Bank in the Palestinian territories today, one of which comes to mind is Ramallah, this deeply troubled city in the Palestinian territory today, where more people from Ramallah historically live in the United States than do there as well. And I think that is why Governor Pataki and Mayor Giuliani, and certainly the political leaders in your town, living elsewhere in the country, have made a special effort today to call on people to be tolerant and understanding, and not to lay blame and let their prejudice run away with themselves, because we don't know who did this. We do not know who did this, and any tendency we may have to lean in the direction of saying that one group or the other did it quickly reminds us of what happened at Oklahoma City, when we all thought it was one thing and it turned out to be someone else. John McWethy is outside the Pentagon. John, I gather now you have what we can call a preliminary casualty figure.
It is a preliminary estimate, Peter. It comes from one of the fire chiefs who has been handling the operation here today. The Arlington County Fire Chief is saying there could be 800 dead in the Pentagon.
Can I just ask, John, could be or are?
Could be. They do not have a body count because they still do not know even how many people are really missing at this point. He made an estimate by figuring out how many people were in the area that collapsed, plus the people that were in the airplane, and that is how he came up with a figure of about 800.
Okay, thanks, John. And anything on injured at all?
None whatsoever, Peter. Although they've been going out to the hospitals in Northern Virginia as needed, several hundred, we believe.
John, as horrendous a situation it was at the Pentagon, the military is actually in a better position to assess its casualties than anybody around the trade towers. Just simply, it's got better records, know who comes to work in the place, and can check people more carefully.
Well, they have a whole plan for evacuating the Pentagon. In fact, I talked to one office that was supposed to be meeting on the helipad outside the Pentagon in case there was a problem. Of course, that's where the plane went in, so they had to assemble somewhere else. They are very organized, and the medical teams came in very rapidly, military and civilian, to this building. So they had a plan, they executed the plan. No one dreamed that they would ever have to do it because of this kind of attack, but they did it very effectively today.
Thank you, John. John McWethy at the Pentagon telling us that according to the fire chief, the Arlington fire chief, there could be as many as 800 people dead. in the attack on the Pentagon today. And lest you lose sight of it at all, this is where an American Airlines flight, American Flight 77, which was destined from Washington Dulles originally to the West Coast, had 58 passengers and 6 crew on board. This was the aircraft, this Boeing 757, which attacked the Pentagon today. I can't think of any other words to use other than attacked. And the fear of violence continues tonight. ABC's John Miller, I gather, has just heard of an incident in New Jersey.
The New York City Police Department has a report that the FBI is responding to New Jersey because a truck reportedly loaded with explosives has been stopped by authorities on the road there, and the men with that truck have been detained. Members of the Joint Terrorist Task Force, according to the New York police officials, are responding to question those people. I want to underline that all the phones to police headquarters and to the FBI from here seem to be disabled. So sorting through these reports to get specifics, to sort them out, can sometimes take time, but this is information that is in the possession of the police department, comes from the FBI, and we don't know the exact significance of it.
Okay, thanks very much, John. Well, I guess it's also clear to people now that ABC News is going to stay on the air for an indefinite period of time. For a variety of reasons, of course. One is to continue reporting the news, which is our job, and secondly, because of something that an American historian once said to me many years ago, that the television set is roughly equivalent to a campfire in the days as the wagon trains were making their way westward, and there was a catastrophe on the trail, and so people pulled the wagons around and sat down and discussed what went on and tried to understand it, and then went on the next day. And we do that in front of our television sets now in large measure today. We did it, you'll recall, at the time of the Challenger. We did it when President Kennedy was assassinated. We've done it in any number of incidents, whether we're working on television or watching television or contributing to it in some way. This is, in some respects, the national campfire, to use that analogy. And one of the things we try to do at the moment is to reach out and, not in any scientific way, try to understand how people are feeling about this. Not just the man on the street interviews, which we'll get to in just a second, they're so important, but in terms of trying to understand what people's attitudes are about things. And so we did a poll. An ABC News poll has already been conducted, one of them. And you may find it interesting. One of the questions asked, did the United States do all it could, reasonably could, excuse me, to prevent these attacks? And there's a split right down the middle. 43% say yes, and 44% say no. Here's something very interesting. We asked people whether or not they had confidence in the United States to find and punish those who were responsible. And we asked people whether they were very confident or somewhat confident, and quite an astonishing 91% said yes, and only 9% said they had little or no confidence. Were people willing to give up some liberties? It's been a point of discussion throughout the day. Were people willing to give up some liberties to support a crackdown on terrorism? 66% in this poll, very quick poll. It's a limited number of people, only 600 people interviewed, plus or minus 4%, all those usual admonitions about it. But 66% of people said they would support sacrificing some of their liberties in order to crack down on international terrorism, on terrorism in general, and 24% said no. Would you support military action against groups or actions responsible? 94% said yes, and 3% said no. Would you support military reprisals even if it could mean war? Maybe this is not a surprise in the intensity of these early hours. 86% said yes, and 7% said no. Fair to point out that none of us have any understanding of what a definition of war is at the moment. The last time the United States went to war was in the Persian Gulf, and it was by conventional war standards, it was fairly casualty free for the United States, and we didn't even do as much, the United States didn't do as much damage to the Iraqis as they had originally anticipated.